Hey, so this is happening so frequently in my practice that I don't want to waste any more time talking about it. Too many people are hurting. And considering my function in terms of the helping profession, I know that they're not the only ones. And if anybody can hear this, I think it's important to offer some perspective and an opportunity to gear up a little bit differently. Now, obviously, I'm sitting in front of my house, so there may be a car that goes by. I'll wait. It's important. And it only underscores the fact that this happens in the flow of life. There's no specified time when people decide to ghost us. And this ghosting phenomenon, like a part of me wants to joke around because it's so crazy making, but it doesn't do anybody any service. You know what I mean? It doesn't help the hurt, and it doesn't assuage the confusion. It doesn't soothe to just acknowledge that it happens. We need to be equipped differently. We need to be differently brave in how we hold and hold accountable the people who do this. And believe me, I understand how hard it can be to put words around this in a direct format. Number one, who are you going to tell? That's the whole point. They're gone. They just disconnected. So how do you confront? Therein lies another conundrum. Many, many times, if we've been ghosted, we're also ripped the opportunity to feel legitimately hurt and angry, confused. Now, we can say it privately with our friends, but the individuals who pull this off, there's some sort of how would I say it? There's some sort of pushback that says, okay, there's a car horn going off, it's pretty funny. Anyway, there's a pushback that says, you're needy, you're sensitive, you're making it up, you should know why. There's another shadow side to it. It can be interpreted as, you weren't worth the investment of even giving you the dignity of closure, or at least feedback. You're left with an interpretation of potentially being the toxic one, even though you've done rigorous self-reflection, saying, I do believe I cleared my side of the street, and I know that I've got my own shit. Sorry to say. For example, I've referenced that I had serious ADHD, to include probably some symptoms that are still present. And so I'm pretty terrible at sort of organizing my time in a way that sets it aside for connecting with the people I care about. And I'll tell you, I often feel really guilty about that. Like, I worry if people know whether or not I care. Here comes the car. We're gonna wait here nicely. And so, even though we know that we've probably done our part to the best of our abilities, we're kind of going, wow, I must be like super disposable, because I really thought that I mattered. And you know how Brene Brown talks about we're wired for belonging? So we really are wired for belonging. And when we get ghosted, it says, you weren't worth being connected to me. You weren't worth being connected to me. No matter what history we shared. You weren't worth the further investment. I didn't get anything out of it that was useful. Instead, it was useless. And we're left to interpret that we really weren't worthy of dignity. Right? You feel me? That's painful. And then it gets better. We're left with the transcendent function. In other words, we're left with the responsibility, again, by the way, of holding a higher ground and saying, this hurts, I'll be okay. This hurts, but as I mentioned a couple days ago, I am learning the skills of who is the predator and who is the protector of connection. And I will better manage where I invest my energy. That's fine. But I'll tell you, it is hard to get there. It can take years to get to that kind of clarity. We can be so hurt and confused by the event itself that a part of us starts to question a whole lot that we never dreamed we'd have to. I have mentioned setting boundaries, and this is usually the trigger. Believe it or not, the more we care about ourselves, the more that we set dignified boundaries that are eminently respectful of our time and them. Lo and behold, those very individuals drop you. And even as I'm sharing, my heart is beating fast because this happens to me personally, even as I hold this awareness with others. And what I mean by that is, all I know that I did was set eminently respectful boundaries with people in my family, actually everyone in my family, immediate and extended. And because of that decision and that commitment, all of them said, this is my experience, a righteous, and I'm so sorry to do that. That's so offensive, really. But that's actually the effect of what it feels like. I wasn't worthy of the initiative. I wasn't worthy of the explanation, of the silence. And when I say I wasn't worthy, again, we don't go back to the victim-based assessment. I wasn't worthy. Now, we might feel it at times because it's so frustrating, but the acknowledgement of it, the admission of its language and its message, you weren't worthy. Our connection, our friendship, you being my daughter, my granddaughter, you weren't worthy of the investment. It's gut-wrenching. And I just want to say to people, cut it out. You know, man up, woman up. Oh, this is perfect. This is great. I think we're going to get a fire truck. Oh, thank goodness they're turning. Wouldn't that be unfortunate or fortunate? Most of the time with these uploads, people who don't really need to see it end up being the ones who see it. And the ones who do, you can't even reach them anyway. I mean, you can try, but then again, you're the pushy, reaching, needy person, which is such a lie. Most of the time, if we're not being codependent, we want to reach out and establish and re-establish that connection because, again, we are wired for belonging. So I go back to it over and over again, for our daughters, for our sons, for the future. Teach ourselves and teach others who is the predator against the connection, who might be a risk of ghosting, or who's a protector. And if you misunderstand that, if you have a blind spot around who's the protector, who's the predator, been there, done that, I see it in the practice. Learn. Build an awareness. Oh yeah, there's another part. Build the awareness of what you missed with compassion, with grace, with allowing, with mercy, all those things that were not demonstrated to you. Pull up that knowing, that deep knowing that you are worth it, that you can learn and protect yourself better, that you can teach your children how to minimize the risk of them enduring this ghosting behavior. And even if they commit suicide now, I hate to go right there, but for those who know, my brother pulled that off, and it slayed me. Even then, you can rise above and not pathologize only, not say that it was probably because of some untreated mental illness. You know what? None of that is my business anyway. No, the deal is that once you acknowledge the grief, the confusion, the hurt, maybe a sense of betrayal, then you know, because you are internally being responsible, that you too may have behaved in a way that hurt others, and you didn't circle back to make amends. They too have a reason, and we can extend grace and mercy and kindness. So again, for those of you that feel tempted to opt out of giving the dignity of saying, hey, we've come at a crossroads, for example, the political structure and landscape, in addition to the family members, personally again, that's fine. I set boundaries of an opinion beginning last September of saying the hard things of, are we prepared for what it will be like Should Trump stay on stage? It's just a question. Critical thinking. As that opinion about what I'm assessing increased in clarity, silence from individuals I'd known for years. Now, did I reach out? Did I poke the bear, so to speak, of noting the silence? Well, this is one last thing about boundary setting. I know I've said this before. In ourselves, we know when we are wanted and when we're not. We deep down know. There are so many dismissive, passive-aggressive ways of saying you're important to a point, and or you're not important at all. Okay? Here's another card. And I think this is so important that I'm willing to look stupid out here, by the way, talking to my phone as people drive by. Okay? But my heart is aching and I'm sort of done with not naming into this. It is unholy. It is unholy ghosting. And it can end one person at a time with increasing just a little bit of empathy. And we are in dire need of empathy. And I'll be a one-hit wonder about that over and over and over and over again, because it is the antidote to this pain. Be differently brave. All right? I keep saying that too, banging on and on and on about being differently brave, connecting the dots. That's because I don't want my daughter to hurt. I don't want you to hurt. I don't want your kids to hurt. I kind of want to stop the hurting, if you don't mind. Because who's got the time for that? In addition to all the other things we got to do? I don't. And I don't think you do either. There's that. Happy Tuesday. Tomorrow is halfway through the work week. Yeah, I'm down for that. Thanks for listening.